Okay, you saw the Chargers destroy the Bears last night.
Yeah.
What's your takeaway here? Things are now fixed, or this is just an inferior opponent that the Chargers should have beaten? What's your 2 cents on the team that you see more than all, Daniel?
I would say 2 things. Encouraged for the Chargers, and that Bears team is terrible. They are bad. Like, they are 10 players away from being 10 players away. They don't have talent. I mean, they've got DJ Moore and they've got a couple good linebackers, but their offensive line, defensive line, not good. They aren't very good. So I'm not going to overreact to it from the Charger side of things, but they protected better. Herbert was dialed in. He kind of has made a change. He doesn't have that glove on that finger, so he looked a little more comfortable there. Austin Eckler finally starting to get healthy, get him involved in the passing game was encouraging. Been kind of waiting for Derwin James start making some plays. He has an interception. Bosa, who had a toe injury, he looks like he's getting a little bit of his burst back. There's players there, Rich. I mean, you know it. I mean, the Chargers have got players. And the schedule, and it's going to be a big one on Monday night coming up against your Jets. But they could get that one. They'd be at 4-4, and then you're right back in it. And, again, it's all in front of them. Their season's not over. It's not the start that they wanted. But I'm not going to say, oh, problem solved. They're fixed because of the quality of the opponent they just played.
And again, against the Jets, that is a big game for AFC playoff positioning halfway through the season here, because, man, I would have signed for 4-3 even with Rodgers being healthy, because of how difficult a gauntlet the first 6 games of the Jets schedule was and wound up being. And they went up 3-3 in that 6-game stretch. And then, thank goodness, there's no pictures in the standings, because that was as ugly as it gets yesterday. So what is your assessment of Zach Wilson and how sometimes he just still doesn't get it? Like taking a sack on a 4th down on a do or die that it did appear to be. They didn't die in that 4th down sack. They still won it. But what's your 2 cents of the assessment of him?
Well,
DJ?
I'm glad you asked me, because this is a funny morning that I had. You know, when you're doing games, you're doing Charger games, I'm doing that night game, I don't get a chance to see the games on television as much. So I get to see the narrative before I see the tape.
Yep.
And so I see the narrative, and Zach Wilson is the worst quarterback that's ever walked the face of the earth. And so then I watched the tape this morning, and I rarely do this, but there's enough guys doing it. But I actually did like a 5-minute video kind of breaking down what I saw in the game and how I thought this was I thought not only was not bad from Zach Wilson, I thought it was pretty courageous and did some good things. And then everybody starts replying to me like, oh, you and Orlovsky, blah, 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 blah. So I immediately, I call Orlovsky. I'm like, Dan, did you do something on Zach Wilson this morning? He's like, yeah, dude, the tape wasn't bad. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just did the same thing. Like, it was to the point where I felt compelled I needed to try and defend the kid. But when I watched it, Rich, as you know, you watched the game. You're playing in a driving monsoon. Let's start there. You lose your starting 2 centers. You're playing with your 3rd center in this game. Yeah. There's obviously no Dwayne Brown, no Vera Tucker, no Tippmann. Now you're down McGovern. Now you're down Schweitzer. You've got one wide receiver who's a stud in Garrett Wilson. You cannot run the ball. Like, the Giants could actually run the ball. They couldn't throw it a lick. They had -9 passing yards. But Zach Wilson goes out there, throws for 240. There's probably 4 drops in that game that would have taken the total. There's the pass interference would have added on to that. He got pressured 25 times. Most of it from Dexter Lawrence, who at 350 pounds is going up against the guy who was on your practice squad as a guard who's snapping you the ball. And he hung in there. And for all the talk over the last few years has been, man, our defense is so great. If he just doesn't screw it up, just don't turn it over. He's got 1 pick in the last 5 games. They played in a monsoon, and he rips 2 throws at the end. You talk about the terrible sack he took. That was terrible. The play before that, 3rd and 10, he hits Lazard for a conversion, and he drops it. So, I mean, it was just kind of all these different things. And even the last play of the game, Rich, the narrative was, oh, my gosh, Zach Wilson got bailed out. He's got a guy wide open. He underthrows it, and you get the pass interference penalty, and they kick the game winner. I posted the play. He got stroked. He got hit right in the teeth. He can't even follow through, but he hung in there and got the ball out there and gave him a chance to win the game. So I don't know. I think, and this and me and Orlovsky are on the same page on this to get fired up. But We're not putting him in the Hall of Fame. We're not even saying he was the right pick or should have been the pick at number 2. If you're watching him and you can't agree that Zach Wilson has gotten better, then I can't help you.
Okay. Look at you, Daniel Jeremiah, caping for Zach Wilson.
By the way, everybody goes, that's because you're boys with Joe Douglas. I'm like, Joe hasn't called me in 2 months. I'm pissed at Joe.
Okay.
So this has nothing to do with that.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.